Welcome around the work stand and happy Pride Month.
Hey.
Yay. Ryan, it sounds like you and your partner kind of really kicked things off with a bang, celebrating Pride Month.
Yeah, we did something we've never done before. We went to a drag show. We'd been, really curious about it, and the perfect opportunity came up in that they had like a brunch drag show. So that's
That
like,
is a that's a big thing. I feel like I'm hearing about drag brunches all over the place.
yeah, it's worth it because A, you get a quality meal out of it, and then lively midday entertainment. Um, yeah, it was fun. I think we learned a couple things. One is best to go with friends. Like it's a very lively atmosphere, and that just like as a couple, it was fun, but it would have been more fun if cocktails had been flowing with the group. Um, but
Yikes.
I think I get it a little bit more. Like it's like I get how it like destigmatizes gender expression. Like because Corey and I both like we grew up in a different time when like it was I guess less acceptable to express yourself that way, and it was really a ton of fun to just like be in the midst of pure celebration.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I love just like the art of drag. I think it's really incredible. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm very jealous. Hopefully, maybe I'll check it out. I don't know if anything in Fort Collins going on.
it's
We'll see.
Pride Month all month.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
But that's, I mean, we're trying to encourage people to do that. Like now is a great time to kind of just focus on making sure everybody feels welcome here. And I think some of that is all of us kind of stretching ourselves a little bit and, I don't know, gets us out of our own heads.
Yeah, yeah. Try something new. I will say the first Pride parade I ever went to was in San Francisco. At that,
Well,
I mean, nothing can beat that. It was so incredible. It was. I mean, you see all celebrations on all spectrums of just kind of like the super fun, loud, and then like the service people walking with their families, sell it. And that was really, it was beautiful.
that is
It was
really nice.
honestly, I think the impact can be kind of downplayed, but it was honestly one of the most memorable experiences of my life. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Ryan, you've been we're just you're so busy.
I've been traveling a ton. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just kind of like it comes in waves. I traveled a lot in the spring and then I had a month or two to kind of get used to being home and now it's all upside down.
Yeah, yeah. So you went to Bentonville for the NBDA Retailer Summit.
Yeah.
How
It
was
was a
that?
blast. Yeah, it was, good to see, old friends, but also met like a lot of new people. It was really well attended. I think MBDA and Heather did a great job.
Heather
I think
Mason,
what,
right? The president of the NBA you're talking about?
yeah, yeah, the Heather Mason. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but I tell you what she's doing. There are a couple of things really stood out. One is she did a great job of getting, like supplier support for it. I mean, it was super well attended by suppliers and I think
Cool.
it's a testament to like how much she's done to advocate for dealers and really make sure that suppliers know that, hey, let's be present. Let's contribute to education when we can. Just it really had a sense of partnership between suppliers and retailers, which is really great. Which isn't to say that there wasn't like some tension. I think if you get dealers on stage, they're going to express some of their frustrations with some of the dynamics, but I think that was expected. But the next thing, on stage, a lot of dealers presented, which is great. I'd say about half the presentations. So I think it's really important for dealers to learn from their peers. And nobody who got on stage claimed to have a perfect business, but everybody had a little something that was special about their business that they could share, and it was really
Like what?
nice.
What were some of the presentations the retailers were given?
Well, one that really stood out to me was a an interview with Joe, who runs Trek Bicycle Stores of Florida, and he talked a lot about understanding finances and really weighing. You have to have your finances in order to be able to do all the other great things as a bike shop owner. That carried through. I think Peter Henry discussed something very similar. Forgive me, I don't remember all the presenters, but financial competency was a big one. And I think especially as the kind of industry gets a little more tight, I think that's a really important thing for business owners to invest in. But the other one was selling online. I think that was a really noticeable change. We've been kind of talking about the value of selling online for years, but it really felt like it was mirroring back to me. Just a lot of the discussion of the direct to consumer business and a sense of perhaps dealers, missing out on sales. But one dealer, I think their turn of phrase was something like, hey, we're all in the direct to consumer business. So it's not just supplier selling. That's where your customers are. Connect with them online. You can deliver the same convenience. And I saw a lot of heads nodding. So something about that turn of phrase really resonated.
I love that. I think presenting those topics as a peer, I think is just so much. We can try with all our might, but sometimes hearing it from someone who's also kind of like, lack of a better term, kind of like in the trenches, sees the day to day, understands. And we say that we understand. We've all worked in bike shops, managed bike shops, owned bike shops. I haven't owned a bike shop, but I'm just going to lump myself in with you guys.
Somebody on this call has. Yeah.
Someone has. Yeah. And so I think hearing it from someone who's in it right now, is so close to it, I think has just a bit more credibility, So
there's a bit of, there's always a bit in all groups, certainly in our group in the bicycle industry, there's a little bit of being suspect of a message coming from a company or a person who makes their living off that message. Yeah. So, but it's part of it. We were ahead of the curve in 1999. And it advances, and at some point, adoption happens, and maybe we're just at that inflection point where there's a tipping point where the merchants are now seeing it more and more and more, and it's going to be a more well-received message when it's coming from a peer. I think that's natural.
Yeah, I definitely saw that, and I think one conversation really stands out from a two-store bike shop in Des Moines. And the gentleman just runs a super distinctive business. And after the presentations, he just came up so enthusiastic of realizing, what did he say? He said he was sitting next to another dealer who was logged into their workstand site and processing an order. And that really opened his eyes up. And he just insisted that we talk in the next break. And we spent an hour together and him kind of understanding how can this have a positive impact. And he's just super stoked.
How cool. That's amazing.
It was great. Those conversations fill me up.
That's exciting. What about from the supplier side? If half the presentations were merchants, what did you see on the supply side in those meetings?
There was a lot of conversation about partnership. I think a lot of the suppliers that are there are very focused on really understanding that the dealerships push the majority of their volume. And so very focused on talking about how the two sides of the equation can work together. A lot of conversation about data sharing, wanting to sell out of dealers' inventory. That was super helpful. There were some, good high-level conversations about kind of the narrative of the last several years, which I think I take for granted because I've been so close to the data and supplier discussion for, really, pre-COVID, but certainly through this. But I think a lot of the audience, they read Brain, they have some general themes, but to have somebody come up and like really explain the narrative of where were some of the breakdowns in the supply chain, how did that happen, how did that impact current inventory. So I think just realizing the business case behind the market conditions, I think was really helpful.
Yeah. It's always good to we're all in the same boat, so to speak, but you're doing this, I'm doing that. Over time, if you don't get those conversations, animosity develops, and you see that in some comments on some of those Brain articles. So it's really good if folks can get together and see both sides of the story.
I agree. And I would say I can't imagine too many members of the NBDA P2 program, kind of commenting on those forums from kind of a singular point of view because they spend so much time networking with other dealers. Mm-hmm. Their perspectives are just so much more well-rounded, which I think is just healthy for everybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about performance? Let's move on to some data points from May.
So yeah, I mean, I think listeners know that like every month, we pour over what we call platform metrics. So being that we are a single platform for 1,300 shops, we get to really see get a clear picture of what's happening in the market. May results were soft. I think the number one thing I was looking at is just overall order volume. So across the whole network, the number of basically transactions was down for the month relative to last year, and down 14%. So that's pretty big. And it was the slowest month of what had already been a pretty soft year. So there seems to be some momentum lost. Now, that being said, that doesn't necessarily equate to sales being down that much. In fact, the overall of the platform was up 2%. So, there's certainly a lot of dollar volume going through. But we obviously want to see more traffic, because if you have more traffic coming in and still having those higher average order values that are driving growth, I think that's really good for everybody. Also on the positive front, this has been a trend all year, is that sessions and page views are way up. So consumers are visiting, they're shopping. I would speculate that their orders are being spread out a fair amount across different sellers, because there's a lot of shopping for deals right now. And so I think shops aren't quite able to convert it as much as possible because consumers have so much choice. But May in particular was incredibly strong for traffic, and the Google data was the same way. Like, looking at search volume for best bike, it was the highest level at the end of May than it's been in the last 18 months. So there's certainly a lot of customer shopping, which is great.
Is that I think that I'd take that as a positive for seasonality, that, we're not at a state where not even good weather can bring things around. I mean, we see good weather, we get good search traffic, we know people are out there looking.
I see it exactly the same way, Mark. Like obviously we need to connect the dots on how do we take all that consumer interest and turn it into sales growth. But that's just the nature of competition in this market. I don't think any of us have ever seen it this heated. And so, that comes back to like looking at some of the numbers, that positive platform growth is driven by the top performers. So like the dealers who are like, they have a plan, they're aggressively going after the business. They're outperforming, the typical dealer. The typical dealer, though, their year is improving. Typical dealer down 2% for the month. Like I said, that growth is really coming from the top performers. But down 2% is way better than where it was in April. April was down 7%. So that's been really promising, that kind of middle market customer is starting to see better performance. So that's very promising. That's something I definitely want all ships to rise.
Yeah. Well, we got the agency numbers. We look every month. You're looking at everything, but in the agency, we look specifically at the clients we're working with for marketing services and what their performance was, and it looked pretty good. So, like you said, the top performers, those that are investing in it, are still able to make good headway.
Yeah.
Can we go back to kind of the general sales metrics? So, order volume, so that's number of orders, is down.
Like transaction count. Yep.
But sales dollars are up. But then we're also seeing a lot of folks kind of like shopping for deals. Do we have any more kind of insight into what is being sold? Or
so high-end road and mountain is moving, and what we're seeing is the discounts on those products are actually helping people ladder up into a higher quality bike. So that's what's driving the average purchase price up on those two categories. And then, so that's a case where discounts are working. But then the other area is electric bikes. There's a lot of those selling online, and that's really helping with that dollar volume as well.
Okay, cool.
It's worth talking a little bit more about electric bikes. Like that's, I've been doing a lot of work with the People for Bikes crew on trying to understand e-bikes. I'm a part of a new small group called the Nerd Collective, which is exactly. It's Workstand, Bicycle Market Research, and Circana all getting together monthly with People for Bikes to discuss what are our different data sets telling us. And we've been spending a lot of time looking at e-bikes. And one thing that stands out is channel preference amongst consumers for e-bikes doesn't quite match the rest of the market. Consumers, whether it's on our platform or just broadly in the Circana data, there's a higher percentage being sold online than any other category.
So what do we like? What can we kind of glean from that about, are these consumers different, or how they're looking at their purchases differently?
Well, I think I tend to look at two things. One is market driven and the other is consumer driven. So I think on the market front, the real rise in direct to consumer, what I would call high quality products like Aventon or Rad Power, or increasingly on my radar, Buzz bikes.
Yeah.
I think it's just become normal to like, hey, there's the bike there, and there's the price, and it'll be delivered to my home. And so I think that conditioning of shopping just makes it easier to toggle over to the bike shop and do the same thing. And then the other one, I think Mark and we've talked about this before, is that there's a portion of the e-bike buyer that's just a different demographic than the typical person that walks through the shop. And, for them, it's maybe more of a vehicle. Maybe it's it's another lifestyle purchase and not necessarily something that warrants visiting the store. I don't know, Mark, is there anything you would add to why you think the greater propensity to buy online?
I think it's opened up a new segment of consumers to cycling. And it's not enthusiasts anymore. It's people that want to go ride a bike. And maybe it's transportation. Maybe it's replacing a car. Maybe it's later stage in life pair that want to go for a ride around the neighborhood. But whatever it is, they're shopping, like you said, much more the way they shop for other consumer goods. They don't worry so much about buying a $2,000 or $3,000 MacBook Pro. They just go to the website and push the button. And I think there's something to that. I do think, too, there's a little bit less friction as opposed to buying a road bike or a mountain bike or a gravel bike or a tri-bike, because fit's not as big of an issue. We're not looking at 6 sizes of bikes and crank lengths and all that stuff. It's much easier to go the red one. And, there's that one choice in size for the step through frame and you're good. So I think that probably plays some role in it. If at first it's because of the way the consumer's used to shopping for other high-end consumer goods, that gets them there. And then there's just less friction once they are there to just pull the trigger and buy the bike online and have it show up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny, we tend to view e-bikes as a more complicated product, but really for the buyer,
I think it's simpler.
It has gears that shift. Yeah, absolutely.
They have a need that's a solution.
Yeah. There was somebody it was a supplier at the Retailer Summit that was talking about how brands are really fixated on what's the drivetrain or the drive system that's on the bike, and really elevating companies like Shimano and Bosch, as a kind of a co-equal brand on the bike itself. I just don't think consumers care. Like, yeah, Bosch, it's a name brand, but if they don't necessarily equate that to value, and I say that in the sense that consumers, it is a simpler choice for them. Does it have an electric drive system that works? Great. That's what I need to know.
I don't think they're paying attention to one or the other, but I do think it's possible when they see Bosch, the word Bosch, most modern consumers will go, "Oh, Bosch, I know Bosch." Either it's power tools or dishwashers or something. So that could have an impact. And I do think, as we talk about this from the standpoint of buying online, I don't want to get away from it without reminding everybody that every one of our clients can play in this environment. Online doesn't just mean direct to consumer from a brand. It means local bike shops that have put the tools in place to be a solution and an option to win those searches in the first place and take that business.
Well, was it a retailer at the NBDA Summit that said, we're all in the direct to consumer business? Yeah.
I just think it's really important to recognize when there's a shift in not just consumer behavior, but the actual consumer. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing in that. And I hope everybody takes a step back at their business and make sure there's room for that consumer in the way you're presenting your product and the way you're delivering service, because there's also different expectations on what happens when I make that purchase. They're going to have sometimes higher expectations in some ways. Some ways it's easier to get to the sale, and in some ways they expect it to be more like an automobile dealership where there's a delivery of a product and information imparted, and sometimes it can be more detailed. So I'd encourage merchants to take a step back and look at that. Is there room for that consumer? Is there a path for them to purchase the way they want to? And are you providing that level of service that maybe they're expecting, or at least whatever's different? Maybe it's even less service, but are you providing it in the way they want?
I still unfortunately hear periodically a dealer say the online customer isn't my customer. And I don't really support that thinking. I think it's just in a pure dollars and cents, to give up revenue based on kind of a false assumption. But it's really just your customers changing. So you adapt to meet them.
Yeah, I think just making these assumptions as to who that customer is, I think is this sounds maybe is a little bit short-sighted. I think this can apply to so many things in life. Is just to we need to stop making assumptions about who people are, what they need, what they want, and how they will go about getting it. We can really apply it to a lot of things, especially maybe in spirit of Pride Month. It's just don't make assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, connecting, that's great.
Yeah. But that attitude makes me sad, because we talk about this all the time. Consumers they don't shop online or shop in store or shop this they're just shopping.
Yeah.
They really don't differentiate. I don't go, I want this thing, I'm going to shop online. I just start searching. And if I get what I want, generally I get to go buy it at some place locally. But I'm just shopping. And I think to Susie's point, to say that's not my customer, that's sad, because that's just the way people shop for things now.
Well, I mean, I can say probably almost weekly, I am looking for a specific product. I search for it online, and a lot of times I use the Google the local shopping ads that you see at the top of your search results. Sometimes I'm presented with mostly online things, but I found a very specific product I was looking for this weekend at a local retailer. And it's anything from what I would get at my grocery store to I broke the strap on my rear light for my bike, and I needed to find a new one or a new rear light or whatever. But it's just a tool. Meet folks where they're at.
Yeah.
And I think it can sometimes be a hazard to say, well, I, Ryan, do this thing, or I, bike shop owners, do that thing. But when I presented at the summit, I just asked for a show of hands on who's shopped on Amazon in the last week, and every hand went up. So that's just to say it's become ingrained. We start our shopping process online. And it just to remind that kind of dealer who's somewhat cynical, if you sell a product direct, you make the full margin. And close the sale. I think, Mark, you said it. It's just a change in the order of operations in the shopping process. It's, customer buys, then comes in. Because for our customers, I think almost all of these orders are for in-store pickup.
Yeah.
So you're still going to have the conversation with the customer. You're still going to have the add-on conversation. It's just, asking for the sale on the bike. It's already done. They've already paid.
Yeah. And there's a lot less argument about price when that sale is transacted. They pushed the button. They paid.
Well put.
Yeah. So I think this kind of brings us to let's touch on, speaking of, I feel like all of these things, Lauren Webb, our agency director, joined Heather on the NBDA podcast.
Bicycle Retail Radio.
Thank you. I had retail radio. I was missing the word bicycle. Yeah. What do we do?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
And really just, it was so impressive. I felt there was so many tips, but also Lauren and Heather really worked together to talk about what tip or what approach is right for you as the retailer and your unique business. of course, while still emphasizing the importance of kind of buy online, pick up in store, a lot of those pieces. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was great. I think did I say too much? What do you guys got?
No, no, it was great. Lauren is like, is there anybody in the industry who works with more dealers for marketing? Like how many, is it
They're
400?
just over 400 now, 402 or 3, I think now.
Well,
Yeah. So I challenge you to find somebody who works more hands-on at a higher level than Lauren Webb does. Like even suppliers that work with a single brand's dealers on scale,
yeah.
you know, that's oftentimes just pushing out content. Lauren does it collaboratively. She has hey, here's the playbook that we know works. How do we personalize that for you? How do we understand your goals and make something special for you? She's just exceptional.
Yep. Agreed.
Yes, great person, great boss. Like, I mean, you guys are great, but I don't know. Yeah. She was
Lauren's the best of us.
She was my last boss before Paul, but
Yeah.
yeah,
You wouldn't be here without her.
absolutely not. No, I mean, no, I really think Lauren has really helped kind of like help me shape my career and my marketing perspective. I think she really, she always comes at everything with compassion. And I think that's just always a great place to start, no matter who you are and what you're doing. But also really everything is very like, it's, client first and focusing on making it easy for the consumer to learn, buy, say yes, take the next step. And
that filters through her whole team, just like she
Yes.
had that effect with you. She works with that team of six account coordinators. There's copywriters and strategists and Google Ads team. She really helps drive that entire team towards such great success and serving our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So please check it out.
Yeah,
Take our word for it.
We'll put a link in the description to that podcast.
Yeah, lots of good takeaways. Please check it out.
Yep. I mean, not quite as good as this podcast, but they do okay.
They did okay. No, I was really impressed. I think kind of coming back to it, obviously, I think the NBDA is a great partner to us. I love working with them, and we have this kind of like collective mission. And I'm really excited to hear about the summit and how everyone, from retailers to suppliers to kind of solution providers like ourselves, what do we market us as a solution provider?
That's not exciting at all.
I'm sorry, but all kind of coming together because ultimately, like, how did one of you say it? It's a common phrase, but like all ships rise. We have to prop each other up, and I think especially now we have to think about us as a collective industry and how we can support each other.
And Ryan, not to back up too far, but did we talk about your presentation that you gave at the Retailer Summit?
Yeah, I don't recall.
Well, tell us.
It was.
Tell us about your presentation.
It was great. Yeah. Well, the topic was kind of what do suppliers, how do they think about their independent dealers in the digital space? And so I think that there's a lot of confusion amongst dealers in terms of, especially around direct consumer, that maybe suppliers want to take their business. And, I'm in a lot of those conversations with suppliers, and I think in some sense I maybe an insider in those conversations. And so I would hear the cynicism come through, and I just don't hear any of that. So instead, we really talked about how dealers in the digital space fill an important kind of gap in a supplier's capabilities in terms of getting into local markets. And suppliers, count on dealers for, over 85% of their total sales. So they want dealers to be successful, and they want it to be an ecosystem where customers anywhere can connect with products, in the digital space. And so that's dealers having their own direct presence. It's sharing data back and forth between brands and retailers. And so it was a really healthy conversation. I thought it was pretty pragmatic around, I tried to be pragmatic around, here's the state of the kind of the shift, and let's remove judgment from it and just focus on how it delivers business value to everybody. It was standing room only. Now, it was a small room, but I'll take standing room.
Wow.
And yeah, a lot of engagement.
Excellent.
So I'm so glad you're so incredibly humble. It really.
Am I? I think there are days when I feel like I think awfully highly of myself. I don't feel good on those days.
Yeah. I'll keep my thoughts to
Well,
myself.
and
Yeah.
if
Anybody who's heard me talk endlessly probably walks away with the impression that I'm pretty stoked on my own ideas.
I was about to throw you both under that bus. I'm just like,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
what both? Would you?
oops, sorry.
And if you can't get enough of Ryan in this podcast, and if you weren't there, won't you be a guest soon on the same NBDA podcast that Lauren was just on?
Yeah, Heather's got a real commitment this summer to talking about dealers connecting the digital space. That's why I align my presentation that way, and why Lauren and I are both guests on the show. So she's got a really progressive mindset around because something else was discussed on that kind of all ships rise with the tide. It was the next thing that the speaker said at the summit was, and the tide goes out, and we learn a lot about what a business did in terms of investing in themselves when the tide was high, to see how kind of how well they perform when it recedes. Mm-hmm. And Heather is laser focused on that, and she knows that digital plays an important role.
Can you say when you'll be a guest on the podcast?
I'm recording tomorrow, and so I think she probably is 1 or 2 weeks out from release, but she plans ahead too, so I don't know. It could be August.
Yes, so do we, Heather, and we have this organization and foresight in common.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
I wish. Well, I feel like I wrapped us up earlier with my.
This was fun. I love these conversations. Like, really, one of the highlights of my month.
Awesome.
We like
thank
them
you
too.
so much. I feel like we covered a lot of great topics today.
Yeah, and if you have questions, don't forget podcast@workstand.com. Send us those questions. If you're comfortable asking them in public, go down to the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us those questions. Susie and I see them all. We'll get them to Ryan, get answers if we don't know the answers to anybody in Workstand. So ask us whatever. We'll find an answer if we have it in our system. Mm-hmm. And please send questions. We love questions.
Yes. Well, thanks, y'all. Until then, we'll see you around the Workstand.
Bye.